Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. Does it feel like your whole world has just been turned upside down? Are you having trouble remembering to drink water or eat? Does it feel like you're walking in quicksand? You can't even concentrate on normal things? You may be walking through trauma. There may be a crisis in your life or in your government that is causing you to feel that you don't know how to put one foot in front of the other. I have walked through times like this, and it really has helped me to walk with a professional therapist through these times. I highly encourage you to find a therapist, and at betterhelp.com/difference, you can get 10% off your first month today. I myself have benefited from a therapist I've worked with there. You can message your therapist in between sessions, go to extra courses around grief or trauma, find support groups, and also really have a person to help you walk through some of the most difficult parts of your life right now. You can get 10% off your first month today by going to www.betterhelp.com/difference. You deserve to heal. Today on the podcast, we have Shira Yevin, the visionary founder and CEO of Gritty and Pink, who is revolutionizing the music industry through her groundbreaking marketplace in Pink, which she told me a little bit about when I first met her a few weeks ago at the How Women Lead Get On Board Week event at the San Francisco War Memorial Building in the green room at an awards ceremony where I was introduced to her by a mutual friend. I'm so excited to have her on the show today. She's going to talk about this platform that empowers women and gender expansive creators with employment opportunities, providing a space to showcase their talents and connect with employers and secure fair pay. Backed by Live Nation women and advisors like Melissa Etheridge, In Pink is a testament to her relentless pursuit of gender equality. Shira's influential work is recognized in reputable publications such as TechCrunch, Forbes, Billboard, NPR, and the New York Times, and her role as a recognized speaker at major events like SXSW, Music Ally Next, and New York Tech Week are a testament to her relentless pursuit of gender equality that drives transformational change across industries. And you might recognize some of her songs from the music that she has written and been a part of a band. She's going to talk a little bit about that, which is where she originally met Melissa Etheridge and, started this whole endeavor where she has been working to really make a difference in this space and in so many spaces, both with her artistic, creative abilities and her business acumen. So excited to welcome to the show today, Shira Yevin. Hello, Shira, and a very, very warm welcome to you today to the A World of Difference podcast. Thanks for showing up with your awesome, cool pink background. It's really great to see you again.
Hi, great seeing you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we met each other at a How Women Lead event in San Francisco,
Yes.
Introduced by a mutual friend, Tamara Gregan. Shout out to her. She knows a lot of people. She's such a connector.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so great to meet you there and learn a little bit more about what you're doing, and excited to have you share more about your background and kind of the work that you do, the difference that you're making today on the show. Just first out the gate, wanted to give you a chance to explain maybe some of the cultures and places that formed you as a person and gave you the springboard to be making a difference the way that you are now.
Yeah, so my dad's from the Bronx and my mom is Canadian, but actually was born in Romania, and they met in Israel. So I am Jewish, and I grew up in New Jersey, went to school in Philly, went to Penn, lived in Brooklyn for many years, and then moved out to LA. So I just had my 10-year anniversary of moving out to LA. But, growing up, I did performing arts. I always loved theater, dance, and of course music. And I was in an all-girl punk rock band called Shira, still am, and toured on the Warped Tour, which was America's longest running music festival. And that was kind of my early intro into the male-dominated world of music, and specifically punk rock. So I sort of became known for crashing the Warped Tour. I was working on the tour. I saw no female musicians on stage, so my band and I crashed the tour in a pink RV and created a stage for over 300 female-fronted bands, including Paramore, their first ever tour, and Joan Jett, and got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so this set me off on a lifelong crusade to carve out a space for women in music and other male-dominated spaces.
Oof, we just share the passion of helping women get into male-dominated spaces. And I think that, that conversation is really, it's hit the fan again when we just had an election and had another chance here in the U.S. to elect a woman president. And there's a lot of ways people slice and dice the whole conversation. And I think that along with politics, often what we see is that people try to fix women and try to enter them into male-dominated spaces and do zero work or minimal work on the male-dominated spaces themselves and keep trying to fix women as if women are broken. Even perfect women somehow are blamed in these situations. So kind of what are your thoughts, maybe very punk rock type thoughts, on the male-dominated music industry in particular? What were some of the things that you faced? Did you feel people were trying to change you instead of the industry itself?
Well, we were just the underdog, Luckily, we had a lot of support from Kevin Lyman, the founder of The Tour, who's now a longtime mentor, advisor, and investor in my company. And, he kind of walked up and looked around and said, okay, Shira, we thought we were going to get kicked out. And he said, so you ready to join The Tour? And it was both, an invite and sort of a challenge, and we had to show up and prove ourselves. There were bets against us, making it to each tour stop, but we showed our grit, right? And so I think part of it is just continuing to show up in the face of whatever it is you're dealing with. I mean, people definitely, would say things, but then if you looked at the audience was still about 50% women. So even though you didn't see any of the female musicians on stage, he had a lot of women working behind the scenes. He had daughters, so I knew that he was all about female empowerment. It was really just, I think, a reflection of a bigger problem in the industry. Record labels were not signing female artists. Radio was not playing female artists. And, the ironic thing is still today only about one in five women, only about 1 in 5 artists played on the radio are women. So I think there is a little bit of a misconception because you see artists like Beyonce and Taylor being so successful. Women get a fair shake, but actually these women talk loudly about these issues. And you have to think, if Taylor Swift has to sing a song like The Man, right, and Beyonce is still talking about feminism, it's like, what does that say for the rest of us? I'm familiar with the Brutal Journey, but, I've toured with punk rock bands, and we'll have people will come up to us and say, excuse me, this bathroom is for artists only. They think we're some kind of groupies backstage. And I said, excuse me, I've been on this tour. I'm the opening band. Who are you? Wow. So it's just things, we get all kinds of things. And I also think that there's some other misconceptions, only about 2% of all popular music producers are women. And people say, oh, there's just not that many female producers out there. Well, no, that's not how it is. They don't, it's a boys club, right? So if they're not in the network, you don't know about the gigs. And also we have to face things like, sexual harassment and obviously with the story with Diddy coming out, I mean, that's a big focus for us, is wanting to, make sure we're ensuring the safety of women on our platform. So, and for those who don't know, my company is Gritty and Pink. Our platform is in pink, and it's a platform to hire female freelancers and teams, starting with the music industry. So kind of like a female-powered Upwork, but big vision to be the global destination to hire female freelancers in every industry. So, I think for too long, women in the music industry in particular, it's like we've been conditioned to believe that there's only room for one, and it's one small opening band in tiny fine print on the bottom of the festival, and so now I think we're starting to realize okay, we get farther, working together, empowering each other, boys of the boys club, so we got the girls club. So, that's what we're all about.
Love it. Yeah. Just recently, wish I discovered it earlier in my career in life, but just the power of women supporting women. Like you said, we have even women like Beyonce and Taylor Swift pointing out, when we look at Taylor Swift and having to do Taylor's version, some of the things she's using her music to point out is that women's work tends to still get owned by men, and then women get underpaid, and then they deal with sexual harassment. There's so many parts of the system that are broken. And, just generally, even outside of the systems, there's a lot of narratives in our culture that hold women back. And we have a lot of internalized misogyny inside of all of us, whether we admit it or not. It's very much a spectrum there. But, I've heard people say when a man walks in the room, he's trusted as an authority, he's believed. Right. And when a woman walks in the room, she has to prove herself. Did you find that true in a music stage as well?
Oh, definitely. 100%. And as a female founder, I see that all the time. We get different questions. Men ask, how big could this get? men are asked, and women are asked, what could go wrong? And it's like you see, some of these men can write an idea on a napkin and get $5 million. We're hustling for every dollar that we get. So, but I think maybe there's an upside in it. We are used to working twice as hard, and the numbers don't lie. Women-owned businesses do better. They drive more revenue. And so I think the people leaning into supporting women in business now, like Lakeisha Landrum-Pierre from Emmeline says that. She goes, in 10 years, we're going to look like the geniuses, So, because they have a fund supporting women founders. So, yeah, we see all kinds of foul things out there, and we do just have to work hard to prove ourselves.
We do. It's just the reality. Every generation of women, it seems like, are trying to make things better for the daughters and granddaughters to come. And, sometimes it feels like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It definitely in the last couple of weeks with the some of the stuff we've seen, really ugly stuff, not just in the way the election went down, but everything leading up to it and even in the aftermath. And I'm interested to kind of unpack with you a little bit about, your studies at Penn. How do you feel like your education in communications and business and theater arts are really helping you approach your career in a specific way?
Yeah. I really enjoyed my time at Penn. I think it was cool to be able to look at communications from an interdisciplinary point of view. I had a concentration in marketing, so I took, coursework at Wharton, which is, of course, well known as a business school. And then, theater arts. I'm a performer, things like this, right? Podcast, public speaking, even every pitch I do, every time I'm in a meeting, just having that confidence. That's always come natural to me because I'm a performer, but, I speak on panels. I know a lot of people who have, struggle with these things. So I definitely encourage people to, explore that side. And, it's so funny. Like I'm part of a lot of female mastermind groups. I think at Penn, I really learned like the importance of community. Like I was part of a dance company at Penn called Strictly Funk, and, just like finding your tribe. And so it's what you learn at the coursework and in your major, but then also outside the classroom. Right. And having that tribe to really share the struggles and wins and celebrate each other and share resources is so, so important. So, yeah, I think that's another thing that I learned as well. But the communications curriculum was really great because it was very like critical. You really taught to like look at pop culture with a critical eye. And I also studied abroad at Goldsmiths in London, which was amazing. And then we got to kind of take this international, look at like American media. But, you just can't take things at face value. And I think that people are learning now to be more discerning, check your sources. And now we have different challenges with TikTok and, Gen Z and, they a lot of us even like we're hearing the news on Instagram, right? We're hearing it on social media instead of in a newspaper or, on the news. And so you have to check your sources because a lot of it is user generated.
A lot of it is user generated. Absolutely. And then there's just bias, in the news, even when it was good. There's like you said, representation in media, like whose perspective is this coming from? Because if we don't acknowledge that even news is giving a biased lens, like if you have an accident happen on the street, the police know you got to interview several witnesses. Somebody's going to be on, trial for murder, or they have to have multiple witnesses take the stand. You don't just take one person's point of view. And I think, listening to a diversity of perspectives is really important. But like you mentioned, even in art, like I was in London for work earlier this year and went to, I think it was at the Tate Modern Museum.
I love the Tate Modern.
I know, it's so cool. They had a whole exhibit about women artists and how several women, like you mentioned, when they went into their field as an artist, they also didn't realize how few artists how few museums put women's art in museums or are the artists that we study when we study art history and that kind of thing. So whether it's in all industries, we face this, right? Where men are centered and men's perspectives. But when most of the movies that we watch have centered men and male characters, and it was not uncommon in the 80s and 90s to have the majority of the movies out there be all male characters and written by men, and Harvey Weinstein produced it. And so, what is your thought on, like, as we consume media of all kinds, all of the arts and everything, when we're listening mostly to male voices, how does that skew our perspective on the world?
Yeah, I think it's such a good point. You have to look at who's creating the media. But I think, we talk about diversity, right, being not just the right thing to do, better for business, right? It's like if these studios wanted to reach women, you have to employ women writers, women directors, right? So I think, and when you saw like young voices like Lena Dunham coming up with girls, and it's so much more authentic. It's just better, and so I think that's really important to look at. I think we've seen, with the Barbie movie, I mean, we've seen a lot of progress and growth, but you also get the backlash, to your point about election, and there's going to be that sort of pushback on any progress and the pendulum swings. So, we've obviously in the past few years lived through a lot of surprising things like Roe v. Wade getting overturned. No one really predicted that. People said, oh, that'll never happen. Even people who voted on both sides, oh, that'll never happen. And then it did. So, we're kind of living in this era of okay, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Hopefully not 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But, right. I think people are fired up now, and we're gonna keep fighting for what we believe in, and it is definitely a contentious time. And something that I talk about to my team and in my sort of friends group that's maybe kind of like a hot take is that I think that people across party lines need to talk more and have respectful conversation. I mean, you see so much polarity. You see it in the comments on Instagram, right? And people cursing each other off, and it's like, hey, maybe we just need to figure out understanding each other's perspectives. We don't have to agree, but can you just explain to me why you think this way? Because to me, it's so obvious that it's this other way. I think it's just people at the core, I think, want the same things. It's just their idea of how we're going to get there is different. Not everyone, but I think a good majority of people, a lot of people voted for Trump because they thought he was going to end the war, and then it's thinking about okay, well, these are people that just want to see the war end. You know what I mean? So it's maybe they're not thinking about the whole landscape, but it's just, I just really feel and especially with the younger generations, it's people they just want to demonize each other. I saw a lot of people on Instagram after the election say, if you voted for Trump, unfollow me right now. I'm not your friend, and I just think an eye for an eye makes the world blind. If you are talking to someone and you say, I hate you, right? The obvious response would be, I hate you too. And then everyone hating each other. And it's how about just hey, I don't understand why you chose this. Can you break it down to me? Well, I broke it down because of this. Okay, well, I thought I'm thinking this way. And it's can we get to even if it's just an understanding of how another person thinks, right? We don't have to agree, but I think that's what's really lacking today, in our country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm all for strong opinions, but if you have a strong opinion, and a lot of us do on a lot of things, especially when it comes to politics, we can have the conversation in a way that has dignity and respect for each other. And
right.
We can change each other's minds. We don't all know everything. Sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we read or saw news through a particular lens and they fed us a bunch of lies, or brainwashed us somehow. And so I do think that the way going forward is to, learn to listen for each other's facts, feelings, and values, and really understand it's a really lost art of communication today, which incidentally I train on in my company globally, which is even in business, we need it. I would love to speaking of business, would love to know kind of more about what motivated you to launch, Gritty and Pink. How has the platform evolved since you started it?
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, I had this whole experience on the Vans Warped Tour, creating a stage, for female artists. And that certainly kind of set me off on a lifelong mission. But I also spent a decade in the beverage business, another boys club. And I worked for Pabst Blue Ribbon, which we used to call Pabst Bro Ribbon. And I helped launch Bev Can Wine, which got acquired last year. And I worked for some other beverage startups, which sort of is what took me into the startup space. And what I saw as a brand was how hard it was to source diverse talent, but yet how important it is, for brands to have talent on and off stage, that reflects the diversity of their end customer. Kind of what we were talking about with the writers, right, in movies speaking to, to women. And so that's really what laid the groundwork for Gritty and Pink. It's me seeing okay, people want to have diverse talent. You have even big tech like Salesforce, they have their biggest event, Dreamforce, right? They have these ambitious gender parity goals that they preach about. Well, their biggest event better walk the walk, And then you have smaller events, let's say like a BIPOC or a queer wedding, and let's say you want a videographer who has cultural fluency, who could put each guest at ease as they capture content, And so it's hard to source this diverse talent. It's even harder for male-dominated roles like sound techs or videographers. We get all the time pushback when we do events. Gritty and Pink does events. We do these all girl jams, 50 female musicians doing theme cover songs. And we love to have women both on and off stage, sound techs, stage managers, lighting designers. And we'll go to the venues and say, oh, we're requesting a female sound tech. And so many times they'll say, oh, we don't have any. Do you know any? It's like, yes, we do. They complain it's a pipeline problem, but we're serving it up on a silver platter within Pink. So that's really what drove the need, was just seeing how hard it can be to source diverse talent and how important it was. And then, these days with AI reducing headcount and changing that work landscape, we see that need to spin up an entire team to collaborate quickly is impacting more industries. And with Gritty and Pink, we have a whole community of women that have worked together before. And when people have work history together, things just work smoother, right? If the sound tech has worked with the stage manager, the communication is going to be better, for example. So we're also facilitating team hiring. And that's really kind of what drove it. Now, on the freelancer side, women in the gig economy have their own, challenges. I mean, first of all, freelancers in general, they have to chase down payments, invoices, but fairly pricing services is a major struggle. And women actually make 50% less on these digital platforms like Fiverr and Upwork. And it's because they're underpricing their services. So we're developing an AI-powered fair pay scale and other tools, to help women upskill and stay on top of emerging technologies. And so, that's a big part of what we do too. It's like not just helping women get the gig, because it can be hard if you're not in the boys club, but also, helping them upskill and work better with teams. And, it can be hard to jump into a role also, like if you have zero onboarding time. And the freelance economy is growing at an unprecedented rate with the way the economy is, and women are even just looking for more flexible work options. So yeah, we see that this could really revolutionize the gig economy.
Yeah, no kidding. I was at a dinner earlier this week with a bunch of workers and people who work in talent development here in Silicon Valley. And people were talking about how they're even in big companies hiring out of Fiverr for just doing this or that.
Right.
And, it is interesting because we know that pay equity is an issue here in California. We have first partner Jennifer Newsom, who's working on that. Obviously, How Women Lead is trying to, be in that conversation too. And we've seen, certain companies sign these agreements that they're going to work for pay equity. As to whether or not they fulfill those or how they are held accountable, who knows? But not everyone even signed it. So I love that you're working on the pay equity piece, because women do undersell ourselves. We do have a culture that expects women to do unpaid labor of home, to volunteer in the PTA, to volunteer at church or in your synagogue or faith community, and just to do a lot of the work for free. And you raise children in a home like that, and then the children are expecting that in their future marriages. We see trad wives trending. We see all kinds of things, surprising things happening in the younger generation. And so I think it's as important as it's ever been to work for pay equity, to have those standards there. What sort of obstacles are you facing as you're looking toward helping standardize some of that pay equity for women in those situations?
I think for us, it's just, developing the technology. The idea is that we'll be able to, based on the scope, the location, and the experience of the freelancer, really pinpoint, okay, here's the recommended rate, here's a range. And the other aspect of it is I think a lot of women, maybe blame it on the confidence gap, but a lot of women are uncomfortable talking about money. There's data around women not negotiating, right? Like taking the first offer. A man would never take a first offer, right? But women are scared to lose the gig, So I think there's that aspect of like removing that uncomfortable conversation of, oh, well, what's your budget, or I charge this, and really being able just to help women easily kind of solve that part.
Yeah, so interesting. I've seen some research out of that at Stanford. They've done some research on women, even the negotiation process in not necessarily a gig economy situation, but in when you're offered a job in a full-time position, and how when they coach women to do some of the same things they coach men to do, the outcomes are different for women, even when they do perform exactly the way a man would. And some 100%. Of it is that likability factor. We've seen this in politics. We saw it around both Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, that the standard, there's so many double standards, toward women, but that likability trap of being either too strong or too warm. And so not being seen as a leader, on either, having to thread that needle that's impossible to thread. So when a woman comes out to negotiate, she might be perceived as being too strong, whereas a man will be seen as, oh, that's a good leadership quality.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of dynamics around that. I'm not sure if you've had to navigate that in your own life or career, or with Gritty and Pink.
Definitely. One thing Jody Gerson, the chairwoman of Universal Music Publishing Group, talks about is women and men have to ask for promotions and raises in different ways. So a woman has to go in and say, hey, you should promote me because it's good for the company. Look at everything I did that's good for the company. It's good for the business, right? It's good for you. A man has to come in and say, look at all these things I did. Look what I accomplished, right? And if a woman tries the other way or a man tries the other way, it doesn't work. And so I think it really speaks to what you were saying about these implicit biases and kind of, men stepping up to the plate and, and realizing that they have to also acknowledge the implicit biases. It's interesting, we talk a lot about like boys club and women in male dominated spaces. And, depending on who my audience is, and I've been kind of looking at like tweaking the, language around, okay, we're, maybe women's empowerment scares people. So we're for gender equity and equality, right? We can all get around gender equality. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like these little tweaks, right? But also, we do need our male allies and not wanting to alienate them. So I get it because some men, even like TechCrunch wrote about us, and which was awesome. But, at first they wanted to kind of describe us as for women. I said, no, we're not for women. We're for everyone. Like any gender can hire women, And so, yes, it's for hiring women, but it's like, it's so important for us to make men feel welcome as part of this movement, because it is better for everyone. I mean, and I think it does work both ways, right? Maybe there's some men who'd rather be stay-at-home dads, right? And there's a stigma around that, or, they feel bad because, a woman is making more than them, their wife or whatever it is. And it's like, it does work both ways. So I think that could really be an interesting tweak on the movement. I saw that, the Women's March is happening and they renamed it the People's March. And did you see that? That's coming up in January. And I had like mixed reactions to this, right? Because I'm very much like I love having a space where women can gather and, really like voice our own concerns, but also love seeing men in the crowd fighting with us, right? But it's like, okay, I just thought it was interesting. Now they're calling it the People's March. Maybe we will see more people come out. I mean, I went to the Women's March, the first year when it was huge, right? 2017. And then, in fact, I wrote a song about it called Resist. And then I went, we did another song called Rights Back Right Now after Roe v. Wade was overturned. And we went to the Women's March in 2023, April in LA, which incidentally, Kamala Harris showed up like unannounced. But I couldn't believe, honestly, how small the crowd was, Lori. Like, I was just like, where are the women? Like if people, I don't want to say that they got complacent, but maybe just the frustration of, okay, the marches don't really do anything or whatever it is, right? And so I'm like, okay, maybe we do need to frame this, less as a women's movement and more as a people's movement. So, I think we just need to keep trying different things because obviously, we've shown America's not ready to hire a female president, even though she might be way more qualified and, not a criminal or rapist. But, it's just like we have to kind of keep, the pivot, right? The word of the 20s, I say, is the pivot, right? Okay, like what we're doing isn't working. So how else can we frame this? So I think that's an important part. And I'm all for, Gritty and Pink does these events, investor roundtables, Women Who Wired. I'm all for bringing together women and providing a platform for us to speak to each other. But really, it does make me happy when I see male allies show up to these events. So.
Oh, thrilled. Yeah, absolutely thrilled. Yeah, I think I'm married to a white man. I'm raising a couple, and my dad's a white man. My brothers are white men. All of them voted for Kamala Harris. When I see white men comfortable enough in themselves to support strong women leaders, to me, that is the definition of masculinity. Like that you wouldn't be so threatened that somehow that would take something away from you. Like equity is equity. When women rise, we all rise. Don't you have a mother or sister or daughter or colleague or neighbor or anybody, the teacher anybody that ever influenced you that was a woman or a girl that somehow made your life better? I think one of the lies of the election was how, people framed a lot of, it really pitted the genders against each other in a lot of ways, even for Gen Z, right? And so a lot of people would say, well, men have to set aside their own desires and what's better for them to vote for a woman. But I'm thinking, no, because when you vote for a good leader, we all benefit. And when you know that your wife, if she's of childbearing age, or your girlfriend will get health care she needs, or If you know a neighbor and their daughter somehow gets, unfortunately sexually assaulted, that you wouldn't force her, if she's especially 10 years old, to have that child. Like, that's going to benefit you because you know that person, and you're going to be distraught on her behalf if you're a halfway decent, caring human being. So to frame it as only helping women, I felt like was not really helping any of us, because the reality is it's not asking men to set aside their desires. You can still vote in your own best interest when you vote for a woman and for girls to be protected around you and to have their dignity on the ballot. And the way that it felt like, to me, it felt like our dignity was on the ballot and our dignity was trampled under the boots of autocratic leaders. So, I don't know. How did you process some of the election?
I know it was rough. I mean, we had look, with Gritty and Pink, we're a community, and we recognize that, we have women with different experiences in the community. While, of course, majority of our followers, are feminists, identify as feminists. Imagine, we're voting for Kamala. Like, we can never assume. So, we always try to not be too sort of partisan in our post. Personally on my own social media, I'll say it like I feel it. But we did post something the day of election, and it was like, so excited for tonight's national gender reveal, and we were all so excited and like just so confident, and it was like, we got great engagement on the post. We did lose followers though, and then of course we were all disappointed the next day. But I think for me, it's like, I knew that there was, it was neck and neck, and there was this chance that like it was not going to go our way. But also I was holding on to that excitement and that hope, right? Because it went there was like these 100 days of just excitement and hope, and even just having like a woman on the belt, and like someone who's so well spoken, and like how we all felt after that debate where it was just seemed so obvious, right? Like, and then knowing like, okay, this excitement and hope could be like taken away from us like real quick, and then as soon as they called Pennsylvania, I said to my girlfriend, okay, just turn off the TV. Like, I can't, like, I don't want to see this guy speak, and then waking up the next morning, I was like, is it official? Like, I can't look at my phone. Like, is it official? So, but I will say this. So I was, I had felt all the things. I was pissed. I was sad. I tried to offer support to my team. Everyone was really bummed. But then I canceled a lot of my meetings that day, right? As we all kind of did, right? Personal day. But I had 2 investor pitches. You can't reschedule an investor pitch. So I was like, all right, I have to buck up and to do these pitches, right? So I have to say, I felt so much better as I got into my pitch, because first of all, I had it felt like familiar. Like, I have my script, but, so it's like, in a way, like business as usual. Like we're going to keep going, like it's not going to stop me. But then the other thing is, every day I'm doing this work of social change, like I'm already fighting for it. I'm not going to stop fighting for it. And so it just made me feel good. Like, because you ask yourself, well, what can I do? You feel helpless, but then it's like, well, there are things you can do. You can organize, you can provide support. And so, so I tried to sort of impart that onto my team, like, look, we're already doing, the hard work, and every one of you is part of this movement already, and this is just going to drive us to fight more. So I think that's really our only hope, and then to just try to also have faith that checks and balances will be in place, and the filibuster, and it's like, and things will be mitigated. Like, I think it's so easy to lean into fear, right? And on the surface, right, seeing all these appointments, like, of course it's frightening, right? But I read an article in The Economist, and it was like, how bad could it go? But then it was like, okay, well, he's probably only going to have 2 years until, we have a blue wave. Let's hope, like, and then it's like, okay, he promised a lot of things in his first term that he wasn't able to execute, the wall and things like that. And so he makes these sweeping, promises, but it's like, well, how much damage can he really do? And I'm not saying he can't do damage. Look, we talked about Roe v. Wade, but I think it's just for our own mental health, we just have to kind of like not lean so much into the fear, and just realize that, like, okay, life goes on. We keep doing our thing. We're going to keep fighting, and the pendulum swings. And, we had Obama, and then we had Trump. And so hopefully, and we had Biden, Trump again. No one could have saw that. But, in 4 years, hopefully we'll have we will see a woman for president. It's hard because I think people think, okay, America's not ready. And, but both times that Trump won, right, he beat a woman. And so, like, that's interesting too, right? Because when he lost to a white man. It's like, it's like that's how much America doesn't want a woman for president, but at the same time, like, they don't really want him either. I don't know. Lots to unpack.
I feel the same way. Yeah, I mean, there's always ways to slice and dice it that you cannot admit that misogyny was a factor. I think it's shameful. I mean, Americans don't want to admit that we're racist. We don't want to admit that our foundations were based on enslavement, and that a lot of the wealth that's come has become on the backs of human beings that were horribly treated with human rights abuses in an insane level. And we don't want to also admit that we're sexist and misogynistic. Like, that's not how that works. People don't say, "Oh, I didn't vote for Kamala Harris because I'm a sexist," or that I'm misogynistic. People don't tend to see that or acknowledge it. So they're going to come up with all these other reasons. And of course,
the economy,
there's always there's other things you can point to, but at the end of the day, it's hard to convince me that when you look very clearly at the only person that's ever beat Trump was a man, and both times a woman, two different kinds of women, both qualified women, a flawless campaign, in my opinion, by the woman recently, and, the amount of fundraising in such a short amount of time, and the momentum and how she crushed the debate. And even then, so it's like, I think when we start to try to change women to fit into a system built by men for men, we're going to still come up against these things until we admit something about the system is wrong and needs changing and needs help, because it's based on old ways that we don't do that way anymore. So I love that you're kind of disrupting so many systems. And I know that, as we've already mentioned, even Taylor Swift has faced a lot of issues as an artist. And so, how do you sort of measure, like, when you look at Gritty and Pink's mission, you have like 280 artists and partnerships with major brands. What is the success that you're looking for? How are you measuring that?
Yeah. Well, we're excited. We're up to 4,000 accounts now on the platform, and we have about 1,000 stars, which are, in Pink accounts that have at least one listing. And a lot of our freelancers actually have multiple listings because everyone's doing multiple things these days. But, and then we've paid out, we've done about $400,000 in transactions on the platform. So, to us, it's like directly putting money back in women's pockets. Because when we were first starting Gritty and Pink, it started as a community. We were doing these all-girl jams, and we had like the basis for Pink, like the best female musicians, 50 female musicians doing these theme cover songs. And COVID hit. We were doing live stream fundraisers for ACLU, different charities, and we started doing Zoom workshops. And then I was just thinking, like, how really can we help women in the most way? At the end of the day, women need to get paid, right? Need to get hired, need to get paid. So honestly, that's what makes me most excited, is just putting dollars like directly back in the pockets of women. That being said, we work with a lot of impactful partners, nonprofit partners, Keep Abreast organization, Stella, who supports female founders and funders. And so, doing that work of helping kind of amplify their missions is really important to us. And really just helping women get a leg up, and democratizing the gate-kept industry, So I think it's those moments, like as a founder, it's such a roller coaster. You go through ups and downs, but, then we'll have these incredible events, and there'll just be like a magic in the room that you want to bottle, and you see women out there talking and networking and doing deals or supporting each other, and the incredible talent that's on display, and bringing all these women together in one room. Like, there's such power to it, and so that's what makes me most excited.
I love that. Do you have any specific memorable moments you could think about? Maybe it was an Instagram live fundraiser or some kind of impactful success story from your platform and what you've done.
Well, we did an influencer campaign with TuneCore comes to mind. They had a study. They do this study every year called Be the Change, and it's about gender equality in the music industry. And, they came to us to source influencers to spread the word about their campaign, and they also supported us in our events. And, Live Nation is also our biggest investor. And so shout out to Live Nation Women. We're very proud to have been their biggest investment, and their only post-pandemic investment, in fact. But, I think times like that where we get these, big partnerships, and it's like, I remember, standing in my kitchen, when I got the email and found out that, the deal is done and it's happening. It's like, you work so hard, and, you have these highs, and these moments, these wins, right, as a business owner, and you just know how, it's going to, help so many women. So I think that is really special.
It is very special. You're focused largely on women in the music industry, and yet you also are, addressing issues of women in the gig economy. But when you look at business at large, from your seat, from your perspective, and the work that you're doing, how do you feel like the work that you're doing can affect all aspects of business, from large corporations to small business? To like, what is some of the philosophy of business that you bring that you feel like you would like to see more of?
Yeah, well, I think, kind of as we talked about, right, diversity being better for business, it's just like bringing those diverse perspectives, right? And it's not just women, it's women of color. I think that one of the things we're most proud of is we have diversity tags. So if you're looking for a queer creator for a Pride Month campaign, for example, or a Black artist perform at a Black History Month event, it's like we make it easy. So you can't kind of say, oh, well, I didn't know any, like we make it easy for these companies to be more authentic. So it's not just rainbow washing, right? Or pink washing during Women's Month. It's like genuinely, supporting these groups. And, I'm a proud member of the LGBTQ community. And it's like, we want to just see more authenticity, behind the support of these groups and have it not just be 1 month a year even, So I think that's important. I think, there has to be just a shift in people complaining that it's a pipeline problem, like the women are out there, so it's not that they don't exist, and they're very talented and they're very capable. So, it's just hire more women.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we're hearing some of that conversation in spaces like where you and I met with How Women Lead, where we see that, women on corporate boards is a, initiative here in California that's something that's being legislated, because we know that, if we leave it the way that it is, the system that it is only going to have the bro club asking their friend Bill or Bob on the golf course if their nephew can, have a space on the board, and then that's how it happens. And so it's a pipeline issue, like you said, right? So when it's who people know, and that's how people get jobs, and that's how people get board seats, and that's how people find their way, into even the gig economy, you have to disrupt that somehow. So I love the way that you're doing that. I'd love to know a little more about your experience, because you've worked with some big names in the music industry through the work that you've done. You've had chances to work with Melissa Etheridge as a strategic advisor. And I would love to know just, some of the people that maybe we know and care about and listen to their music, how they've inspired you both in business and as an artist as well.
Absolutely. Well, Melissa Etheridge, Grammy-winning pioneer. She was like one of the first artists to come out in the 90s, just completely fearless. She's been incredible to work with. I love her so much. It's funny. We were chatting a few months ago at one of her shows backstage, and, I said, how do we get Taylor Swift on board? Because Taylor counts Melissa as one of her, influences. And she's just said, you know what? Same way you got me, right? She's like, keep doing what you're doing. Like, because it's going to happen, And so she's been incredible. She's officially on board as strategic advisor. She has equity in the company. She does, social media posts, hiring campaigns. We've done similar campaigns with Joan Jett and other artists. Basically, sign up for Impink for your chance to shoot my tour, or, do a photo shoot with me, or design my tour poster, things like that. And, we are working with new artists every day. We also have a lot of, up and coming influencers like Mega Gomfrey. These girls have, 6 million, 7 million followers on TikTok, and so this is like the voice of tomorrow. And then we have these all-star musicians like Eva Gardner, who plays for Pink. Nikki Wong is now touring with Smashing Pumpkins, and she also has millions of followers on Instagram, so it's really cool seeing like your friends do awesome things, and play stadiums, and it's like, you're just so proud. And it's inspiring, I mean, the other thing I'll mention is we have a big vision to expand to other verticals. So we're really using music as our beachhead market. And then we're going to be moving into events and conferences, every aspect of the entertainment business, gaming. There's like so many just areas that are male dominated, right? Comedy. And then we want to move into sports, because we've already had clients in the sports industry. Angel City Football Club is one of them. They've used Impink to hire for pre-show DJs, for their Pride Fest, things like that. And, I think women's sports is another area where you're seeing a turning point. It's male dominated, but the Liberty and, all the numbers, like they were so underestimated. And then, and then seeing how successful they are with partnerships and ticket sales. And I had a kind of a moment this summer. I was at like a deli in on the Jersey Shore, and I walked in and the NBA was on TV. And like growing up, they didn't really show like women's sports like that on ESPN, right? Like I never saw my dad, watching women's sports. And I saw a father and son walk in, and they just like walked out, they're waiting online and they're watching TV, and my dad, the kid was like, oh, my dad, like he was asking his dad about, one of the athletes, but just to see him, that kid is going to grow up just thinking like, okay, women are athletes too. It's like, it's going to start from the ground up, and so it's taking time, right, for all the dinosaurs, right, to die out. But like, I think that these generations are very mission aligned, and you're not as transactional when you see Gen Z, right? They want to support companies and platforms that match with their values, and I think we're going to see that also as the values start to change and evolve, and so that comes to mind, the whole idea of like women's sports becoming more normalized and more supported, and I think that's a beautiful thing too, because I really just had this, just thinking about like watching this kid and his father and thinking about my dad when sports, and like it was just, like I got encouraged. Like I played softball, my dad was my coach. It's not like we didn't get encouraged, but there's something about seeing it on a major network and it being normalized, so. Yeah. And there was no talk of like, it's a girl, it was just like, oh, like that's the team we're rooting for, right, Dad? It was cool.
Oh, I love it. So great. Yeah, we've come a long way, and that is encouraging to think about, is how far we've come. And, Billie Jean King, when she was crushing it and winning all the things and still couldn't get a bank account, until 1974 or whatever.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, craziness. And now we're seeing things like, it was sometime in the last year, was it the team from Denmark, the all-male football team that protested and demanded that the women get equal pay.
Right. Incredible.
And then we're seeing, a sports bar being opened that did really well. That was just for women sports. And then now I think it was what I saw this week, right? Whoopi Goldberg is starting a channel for all women's sport. I mean, I saw that. We're going to see a lot of changes. Yeah. So it's so encouraging. I think it's important at times like this, when it seems like the world, and from the United States perspective, this election has a lot of reason for despair, that it's important to realize that there's so many parts of this. I'd love for you to talk about some of your next steps in Pink and Gritty and Pink and all that, as you continue to drive change in the music industry and all the things you're doing. What's some things that are ahead for you?
Yeah, well, I'm fundraising, so that's always a treacherous landscape for a female founder. But, we're really raising so we can incorporate some incredible AI features into the platform. And, we're going to continue to build relationships with artists in different genres and kind of, areas. As I mentioned, expand to other verticals. Right now, we're really leaning heavily into content creation, because there's certainly no shortage of demand for social media content. And we see video is queen. I always say, picture or pictures or it didn't happen, video or it was photoshopped, right? So everyone wants video, and so we're really leaning into the video creators. I think it can be challenging as a startup, as a tech startup. Anytime you want to get people to adopt a new platform, there is a challenge there, and so we're really figuring out like, okay, what is this vertical that we can own and become known for that, and kind of use this strategy of like land and expand, right? Like land these customers and then expand on what services that we can provide to them. So we're really leaning into videographers, and so if you're listening and a woman in the videographer space, or really any space creatively, or any aspect of the music industry, always expanding our talent pool in pink.com. It's free to sign up. We don't take a cut of what you earn. And then expanding also on our concierge service. So we have a brand concierge where we're helping companies put together teams to hire for events and projects. And, as we kind of talked about with AI changing the landscape, we see that a lot more with the reduced headcount. And we work with everything from startups to large companies. And honestly, startups, even though they have leaner budgets, can be really great to work with, because they are a lot more open to adapting new technology and new platforms, and because they're running lean, like they know, okay, this is an affordable option. So, really expanding our client base. And then finally, we're going to be launching a subscription tier for our freelancer side and helping them upskill and, run their business, and providing exclusive opportunities and perks. So we're excited about that.
Love it. Love all that you're doing, all that you've done. How can people find you when they want to find out more?
Yeah, so, Gritty and Pink Life on Instagram, and Gritty and Pink pretty much on all the other platforms. And I'm Shira_girl on Instagram, and I'm Shira Yevin on LinkedIn. And, we're out there on all the platforms. We churn out a lot of content. So, of course, follow us, engage with us, hire women on impink.com, and if you are a woman or know a woman working in any aspect of the music industry, as I mentioned, go to impink.com, create a listing. So yeah, I'd say that's the best ways. And also, when you sign up for an Impink account, like anyone could sign up, male, female, whatever you do. It's totally free. You can use Google, and then essentially it adds you to our email list, so you can get up to date on all the cool events we do and all the campaigns.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the difference you're making and just for helping us to see a better path forward. I really appreciate you and all that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate you having me on the show. It was a great conversation.
What a delightful conversation to think about the space that Shira has created to help connect people who are looking to hire individuals in certain roles. And they often say, well, there's no women. Well, guess what? There's lots of women. And she's providing them through her new business that she has started. And this endeavor is truly inspiring. Also, just the creative work that she has put into her music and her art and bringing it all together. I really love seeing people have this artistic expression and also bring it into the business world. There's so much creativity and innovation that I just see in her work. It's truly remarkable and truly inspiring. If this has meant something to you, please reach out and let us know. We'd love to hear about it. Also, join us in our Patreon conversation where we go a little bit deeper with her on a whole other question there. So join us at www.patreon.com/aworldofdifference, where we talk to her about some exclusive things that you'll get to find out about if you join us. And we would love for you to do that. That's where our difference makers really come together and go a little bit deeper together. Everywhere around the world, wherever you are. I know there's a lot happening, and some of you are celebrating Thanksgiving in the United States, or you're celebrating that abroad, even though your countries you live in may not celebrate that. And so I just want to let you know how grateful I am for you. I'm so thankful for you. You make this podcast happen. You are engaging with it, sharing it with people that you know, having deep conversations, and I am just so grateful for you. Honestly, like every year since I started this podcast, I think about that, not just at Thanksgiving, but all the time, how amazing it is to have people out there like you making a difference and tuning in and listening to this conversation and allowing it to give you access to people that you want to talk about certain things with, and maybe spur on creative ideas for you of what you can do in your little corner of the world to make it a better place. And at the end of the day, that's all we can really do is just work on our own locus of control. It looks different for each of us and wherever we are. And I love hearing from you. So please reach out as always. You can find me now on Blue Sky. I've joined there. Not on Twitter anymore, but you can find me on Threads at Lori Adams Brown, or Instagram as well. Not really on Facebook, although Instagram links to that and places it there, but I don't really interact with it a lot. So if you want to find me, Blue Sky is the best place. Also Threads or Instagram. And thank you once again for joining in every single week. And for those of you who once again want to join us in their Patreon community where we go a little bit deeper, we can also chat there and interact around this episode and the mini-sode with Shira as she stops by to have a little more of a conversation with us there. So I'd love for you to join us. And whatever you're thankful for, I'd love to hear about it. I just really like that whole gratitude piece of what we do. Life's hard, and we want to increase our joy and our gratitude so that we can walk through that suffering and pain that we do alongside others all around us by holding space for that and for ourselves. So if you're thankful for something, I'd love to hear about it during this season of the year where the United States is celebrating Thanksgiving. And I know that's really fraught with a history. And so reframing it in a way that we can be grateful for the land that we live on, to also even, express a lament, which is very appropriate in the sense that there is a history where the Thanksgiving story has been quite whitewashed. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google it. And there's a lot written about it. And there's books, even children's books that we started reading to our children years ago when we lived in Singapore, to give a little more depth to that story. And that there's multiple sides to that. So being grateful for, being able to be where we are now, but also realizing there's a lot that led up to places that we live around the world, that if we dig into the history and the nuance of especially the indigenous peoples that were there first and any of the colonization that's happened in any of the places where we are, it's super important, maybe now more than ever, with some of the efforts to extremely whitewash those stories in the United States especially, but in other countries as well. And so, would love to have that conversation with you as well. We've had different ones here on the podcast over the years sort of address that from different angles. And so if you have a perspective on that, I'd love to hear it too. Grateful for you. So thankful for you and all your perspectives that you bring into this podcast and the way you share your perspective with others. Because at the end of the day, listening to each other, to understand each other, helps us to formulate better opinions and see aspects of the world that we hadn't seen before. I love Shira's work and how she's bringing in just a women's perspective into work. She's bringing her own perspective as an artist, as a businesswoman, and really creating a space to amplify women. I really love that. And I would love to hear if you're doing any of that kind of work too. Once again, so grateful for you. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving, and keep making a difference wherever you are.